This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
All right. Welcome back to the MisFitNation. Last episode, we got to hear from Dr. Luke McLeese and Brittany Thornton-Humko and spoke about their ventures. Thank you for being on, and keep us posted on your ventures in the future. Our next guest is Charlie Jones. He had an aha moment when a close friend was lost in combat and saw a need to preserve memories. So with that, he started the Dear Calvin Project. So without further ado, let's get Charlie on the show. Hello, Charlie, and welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much.
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's another glorious day in Chicago.
Oh, Chicago. I guess it's still cold there.
Yeah, it gave us a bit of a pump fake the last couple of days. It was like 60 degrees and now, back down to 30. So that's, you're always and never surprised in Chicago.
I bet. Are you from Chicago originally, or did you just settle there?
Yeah, no, I'm originally from Arlington Heights, Illinois, suburb of northwest suburb of Chicago. And that's where I enlisted out of. And I'm still in the suburbs now. I just say Chicago because everyone knows where that is.
Everyone knows the big name.
Right, exactly.
They don't know Lake County and stuff like that.
Yeah. Maybe Joliet.
So tell us a bit about you, your story. So, like, from whatever point you want to start, including your service, your job in the service, and how it brought you to where we are today.
Okay, yeah. So I enlisted. Actually, I joined in the late entry program when I was a junior in high school in 2002. In high school at the time, 9/11 happened, so that was on everyone's mind, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do as far as studying goes. I always wanted to go to college, but I wasn't sure about what to do, so I figured I might as well, make something of myself while I'm figuring out the next steps. So I ended up picking, the Marine Corps. I left for boot camp on July 20th, 2003. And biggest culture shock I've ever experienced up to that point. Yeah. So, I enlisted as motor transport operator, which is the 3531 in the Marines. And so I went to boot camp, 12 weeks, then combat training for 3 weeks at Pendleton, then to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri for job training. And when we were leaving the job trainings at Leonard Wood, I went back to Pendleton at 1st Marine Regiment. There was 8 of us that came from there, but 2 of us ended up at 1st Marines, and everyone else went to truck company. And actually, myself and this other guy, Sam Lott, we ended up going to Fallujah 3 weeks after we got there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that was right at the beginning of RCT-1's takeover from 82nd Airborne. So it was OIF-2. It was just the start of OIF-2. The guys that were in my platoon, the more senior ones, had already deployed during OIF-1. So the guys that were newer, we actually ended up staying for 14 months instead of 7 because the other guys had already done a tour before. So 3 weeks in the fleet, get on a plane, fly out to Kuwait, get all the convoy, and then we convoyed from I think it was Anaconda, the base Anaconda in Kuwait, up to Fallujah, to Camp Fallujah, where we established the area of operation take over from 82nd Airborne. And that's pretty much where I was for the next 14 months. A lot of road time, a lot of driving. When I first got there, I actually ended up being in a security element for our headquarters company because I was one of only 2 people that was licensed to drive an ambulance. So, yeah, and that was an interesting one. But yeah. So I ended up getting augmented there. I drove an ambulance for like 3 or 4 months at the beginning of our deployment, which was easily the hardest job I've ever had. We were constantly going in and out. This is when 2-1 and 1-5 were really heavily fighting. And the election too in America was going on at the same time. So there was it was very chaotic in Fallujah. And yeah, it's an interesting experience to say the least. It's my gunnery sergeant, my first gunnery sergeant, his name is Stephen Deal, told me when I first got there, and I think it's probably the best description I've ever heard, was that war is days, weeks, and months of boredom followed by moments of sheer terror, which is a pretty accurate description in my opinion.
That's awesome.
So got back after 14 months and went back to Pendleton to 1st Marine Regiment at Camp Horno, and I was then augmented to 29 Palms as an instructor controller at Mojave Viper, which is one of the training evolutions that units in the Marine Corps have to go through in order to qualify for deployment. So went there and mostly teaching vehicle checkpoints, setting up, stopping positions, taking detainees properly, dealing with the civilians, because those were really big issues at the time, especially after things like, Haditha and Abu Ghraib, stuff like that. It was one of those really hot topic issues at the time. So after that, I went back to Pendleton and spent the rest of my time there. I picked up sergeant before I got off of active duty, and I applied to DePaul University, which I got into. So I went back to Chicago after my 4 years of active time. After about probably 6-7 months of realizing how boring life is, not being in the Marine Corps anymore, and how stupid things like working out was that I was complaining about when I was in, I went back into the SMCR, the Select Marine Corps Reserve, out of Chicago at 224, and I was there for the next probably 5 or 6 years. Then I separated, and after that, I got out and wrote out the rest of my IRR time in the contract, and just kind of made the transition to being a full-fledged civilian again. The project that I'm working on right now was a response to a request, actually, originally. So it's called the Dear Calvin Project. What I do is I create video tribute testimonials for families of people who've been killed overseas, so that they have some kind of remembrance of who the person was. My first mentor, a guy named John Davis, and one of the guys that I deployed with, was killed in Afghanistan in 2013 by an IED blast during a convoy. And his son was 4 years old when he died. So he has very few memories of his dad, and that's just going to get worse over time. Helena, his wife, we were all friends. She reached out to a couple of us that knew him really well, and and said, "Hey, would you guys mind writing Calvin a letter? Just talking about who John was, as a Marine, because she could speak to the husband and to the father, but not to the Marine. And as I'm sure the service becomes a lot of who we are in our identity." So I said, "Yeah, I'll definitely do that." I sat down to do it, and I just could not write. I stared at the computer screen for like 40 minutes the first time I tried to, and I just couldn't think of what to say. And I was also going through a lot of really bad issues myself at the time, and wasn't handling stress very well at the time either. So I ended up just putting it off and putting it off and forgetting about it eventually. I got cleaned up 4 years later, and I was talking about John on the anniversary of his death, and it had just hit me that I hadn't written that letter yet. And I don't know about you, but I've said I'm going to do this a lot of times in my life, but that one was really important to me, and it really got to me that I hadn't done it yet. So I called Helena the next morning, and I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry. I will get this done for you by the weekend. I promise. And I did. But while I was writing it, and it was like 4 pages back and front, and when I was writing, I felt like it was too one-dimensional. I mean, a letter is great because it's tangible and you can look at it as many times as you want. You can always come back to it, but it doesn't give you all of that nonverbal communication that you would see in a conversation with somebody. So, and I've given several speeches and things like that at friends' weddings, and I'm very deliberate with what I say when I say it to make sure that I'm not being confused for what I'm saying is not being confused in any way. So I called her back and I was like, hey, I know I got the letters on, but do you want me to record myself talking about John or reading the letter or something, just so Calvin can see who it is that's speaking, and she thought that was a great idea. And when I just kind of off the hand said, do you think anybody else would want to do that? And she said, yeah, I bet I could find a couple of people. So I called a few people, she called a few people, and by the end of the following week, we had 8 people, including myself, committed to going to Atlanta to film interviews about John from the people that knew him in the service. So I ended up maxing out all my credit cards and borrowing some money from my family. I flew everybody out to Atlanta, including myself, put us up in a hotel for 2 nights, and we cranked out the interviews. It was a really cool experience, but it was a very interesting one at the same time.
I bet it was really you guys to finally get that story off your chest, and onto the media.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I didn't see coming. It always started as a request for Helena and Calvin, and it was most important to me for Calvin, so he could know his dad and who his dad was. But yeah, when I started talking to the other guys about it, all the people that were in the video, and for myself, I started to realize how little was actually processed, how little of that loss was actually processed. I mean, John was a really important guy in my life. Now, I'll tell you one thing, and I make no bones about it. I hated him when I met him. I have never hated anybody in my life the way I hated him when I met him. But it's important to me that is also known, and then I communicate that to Calvin, especially because he needs to know how our relationship turned from me hating him to him being one of the most important people I've ever met. There's a lot of emotions in between, and it's a very important, kind of arc. So I didn't like him at first, but he did become a very important person to me. And I didn't realize even for myself how little I really processed it. I got a phone call. I was at a Blackhawks game watching hockey, and I got a phone call, and it was from one of the former guys in my platoon, Dave Wilkinson. And he never really called me. So it was kind of strange, but once in a while he would, say hi or whatever. And I kind of ignored it at first because I was in the United Center. I couldn't hear anything, but he called me back like right away. And so I was like, okay, something's got to be up. So I went out to the concession area. I was in the middle of a stairwell, and he's like, I'm like, hey, Wilkes, what's up? And he's like, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but John died yesterday. And I don't know anybody's first name. We never really referred to ourselves as first names. So who the hell are you talking about? Who the hell is John? And he's like, Sergeant Davis was killed yesterday. And everything just stopped. I couldn't believe I heard that. And that really got to me. I was so stunned by that. He had to actually ask me if I was still there because I didn't say anything. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll call you tomorrow. Thanks for letting me know. I sat back down. I don't remember who played the game. I don't remember what time we left. All I remember is on the way home, my dad having seen that I didn't say anything for like the last 2.5 hours, asked me if I was okay, and all I said was Sergeant Davis was killed yesterday in Afghanistan, and that was the only thing I said. And it took pretty much every ounce of my composure not to just completely lose it on the way back. It was that was the worst call I've ever gotten.
I can imagine.
So,
in 2007, my best friend was back over in Iraq. We deployed together. We were there with you at the same time. We were with Big Red 1 in Ramadi at the same time you were in Fallujah.
Yeah.
And he re-enlisted, came to the 101st Airborne Division, and in 2007 during the surge, he was taken from us. And I got that call. I was at a Cush assignment where it was just me and my colonel and 300 civilians. And I got the call that he had got taken from us, and I couldn't do anything in the office, so I just walked outside and punched a wall and just yelled as much as I could outside to try to, I guess, process it as much as possible. It's a rough thing to go through.
Yeah, it is.
So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and and I'm really sorry to hear that. I mean, you never want somebody to everyone stops when you hear KIA over the comm. Everyone does. Or when you hear when you get a phone call or whatever it is. I don't care how many times you deployed. It's always a very difficult thing to deal with, that kind of loss, especially when you're so close, especially deploying. Like, you get to know people at such a higher level. You have every stupid kind of conversation you can possibly have with people, all of the dumbest things they've ever done. You become a family, and it's terrible to have to go through that. So sorry to hear that.
Appreciate it. So after you made the first video, and after that is when you decided to make it into a project, or how did that come about?
So we went to Atlanta because I had a friend named Dave Pickett. He's not like in Hollywood per se, but he does a lot of finishing color work for very high-end productions that you've probably seen.
Okay.
I told him about the idea, and I knew that he did things with videos, and I wanted to know like how I should approach it. So when I asked him about it, he said, "That's a great idea. Let me see if I can make some calls." So he called a couple of people he knew. He got a cameraman and a crew. He got a director. He got a sound engineer. He got an editor, and he also helped produce the first video as a gift for the family. So the video that's online right now, that's on YouTube and everything is actually, it's like an HBO level of quality because of the amount of resources that went into it. Now, it's the only video we've done to this point. But this is something that I hadn't intended on it being an actual business until I saw the effect it had and how much it changed my perspective on Gold Star families. I knew John and Helena pretty well, and I didn't know how hard her road was until we started really talking about it. And when I first came up with the idea, I actually spent a long time researching to see if there was something like it, because I just figured there had to be already. And there wasn't. There was nothing like that. The next closest thing was like, it was like booths in major cities where you could stop by, pay a fee, and have your life story recorded by you and put on a server. And that was like the next closest thing, basically. So, I guess in that way, I wanted to try and create this like new kind of video where we can leave the family, especially the children, with a sense of who their parents were, whoever they lost, and in the families to honor their memory and remember them.
Right.
So we ended up going down there for that, and so now I am up in Chicago just trying to get this thing off the ground. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. I don't charge the families for anything at all. I strictly based on donations and fundraising. And that's my here's the one thing too, is like when I separated from the Marines, I lost a lot of my identity with that. And that's one of the things I mentioned about identity earlier. Like I completely lost who I was. And that caused a lot of problems for me. And I didn't really know what it was that was causing the problems for a long time until I really started digging into it. And this venture, I guess you could say, it sort of revitalized that purpose in my life. It's given me something to really push myself to do and to be about. So in that sense, it's almost kind of saved my life too.
And that's a big thing with your feedback, showing your sense of purpose. And many veterans have that same feeling you have. Once you hang up them boots and camis the last time, and you run into that wall the next day because you don't have a sense of purpose anymore. Yeah. You don't have to go 5 in the morning to go work out. You don't have to make it to muster formation. You have to just do whatever it is to survive at that point. And you finding your sense of purpose, this will help you propel you forward and help you to help others find their purpose as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's amazing. I'm going to share your name and contact information with my soldier's mom. We lost him on December 31st, 2010 in Afghanistan as well.
Please do. That would be awesome. I would love to talk to them.
She's in Missouri. It took me 5 years to finally meet her in person. In 2015, we met down in Gatlinburg and drank a few drinks and got to know each other, and we've been close ever since. So
went to a bar? Nobody ever goes to a bar in the service. Come on, man.
No, never. That's not.
That's such a foreign concept.
It's a strange thing. The scuttlebutt says you shouldn't do it.
It always does.
But we do. Yes.
Yeah, no, I would, that would be great. I'm looking for people to do this for, and then I want to do this for every family I possibly can. Hopefully I could get to a point where the donations are to the point where I can just do this for people without having to worry about, fundraising and things like that. But, that's just not where I'm at right now. It's still kind of in its infancy. So, but I would love to do that, to talk to them.
Awesome. And since you are looking for donations, I've seen your website's under construction. How do people reach out to actually find you and donate to you if they're not like in your network already?
The website will be up by the end of the week. I had to have that rebuilt. Last person I had that was going to do it started working on it, and basically all I did was tear it down and then quit. So I had to get somebody else to finish up the website, but it'll be up by the end of this week. And there will be information on that as far as that goes. And if anybody wants to contact me about any part of the Dear Calvin Project, they're more than welcome to at cjones@dearcalvinproject.com, or can also join the Facebook group or reach me through Facebook as well. I'll respond to every message I get. It may take me a minute, but I will definitely get back to anyone who wants any information at all. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody.
Awesome. And I'll put that on, once I make this into a show, I'll put that on the show header as well as the MisFitNation Facebook group page, so they can share it outside of the nation as well. Thank you.
I appreciate that a lot.
So how did you get linked up with Bunker Labs?
So I came back. Okay. So August last year, I moved to Texas. I was supposed to work with this guy, the one I had just mentioned about the website. I moved to Texas, right outside of Dallas, to work with this guy, and ended up falling apart. So I came back in August, and I had to take a break for a bit because going to Texas, it put a huge strain on me financially and mentally and emotionally, especially the way things ended up. So I needed some time off. But what I was thinking about, I had talked to some people from Bunker Labs before, and I remembered the name. So I went on their website because I knew that they had a vague idea of what they were doing. I just hadn't really seen it in a while. And the first thing I saw was the veteran residence programs taking applications. So I just filled it out. I kind of not really expecting to get anywhere with it. And I got an email saying you have been selected. So that's how I got to be part of that group was when I applied for the veterans in residence, and they've been awesome. They really have been great.
Yeah, they are a great organization. I love what they have done to help build the veteran entrepreneur network community, build the tribe. it's really helping everyone out, help each other. Because anytime you go on there, you can ask a question and someone on there will have advice or know a person that can give you the advice to help you on your path to success. So it's a great outfit, great organization.
Yeah, and I will say this too, because I'm part of a lot of entrepreneurial groups like on Facebook and stuff, and nobody has the kind of response percentage that Bunker Labs does. Everybody there wants to help. They really do, and they do actually do what they say, which is a very rare phenomenon when it comes to groups these days online. But yeah, no, they've been awesome. The resources, the classes that I've been able to take and stuff like that have all been very informative. And just like you said, making connections. It's a great group of people that all have a similar purpose, to continue moving forward in their lives. And as a veteran, it's nice to have that comfort level with people on the outside of the service.
Yes, very, very much so. Because you already feel like they're part of your family already, since they are veterans. So you feel comfortable talking to them anyway. So it's pretty awesome the way they do.
It really is. The only unfortunate thing now is because of COVID, everything is remote, so you don't get to meet up.
You don't get to do the actual musters like you used to do. So it's a great organization. Are there any other veteran organizations that you have reached out to help you during this?
Yes, there is Memories of Honor. It's run by a woman named Amy Coda, and she's been a huge help to me, just in the way of that is another nonprofit, and they do fundraisings for families. They do like hikes and runs and stuff like that to raise money for families like that, and they have a great organization. But she's been really great about having time to help and offering advice and things like that, because the nonprofit sector is slightly different, and there's some things that I really needed to learn the hard way, I guess you could say. But it's nice to have the guidance to get through those days, because it's like otherwise it gets very stressful sometimes. But yeah, no, she's been wonderful. A couple of the people in the group that I'm a part in VIR, Robert Dabney with Vet Park, he's been awesome. He's become a good friend, and some of the other guys, Pat Moore, they're with More Home Solutions, I think it's called. They've all been very helpful and open to whatever they can do to help me, which I've always been very appreciative of, and I always try to reciprocate.
Awesome. That's great. So, the final question I have for you: if you can give advice to an aspiring or transition veteran or spouse, what would it be?
Okay. For someone that's transitioning, I would just say give yourself time to acclimate. Don't be too hard on yourself out the gate. And really look for what you want your life to be about, and try not to focus it solely on your military career. It's something that I did, and it caused huge problems for me. Trying also to avoid bad habits. Like, for example, I was a very bad alcoholic for a long time, and that was one of the things that I was going through that was really hard. Trying to avoid things like those kinds of ways of dealing with stress. Try to find something more constructive than that. And that seems like an obvious thing, but veterans are very not apprehensive, but we don't usually like talking about our issues except with other veterans, and when you have a veteran that has like a substance abuse problem like I do, I didn't talk to anybody. So it was always just trapped in the prison of my head. And being, upset at why I wasn't moving forward and not moving forward. And there's a vicious cycle, I guess you could say. For somebody that is aspiring in business, learn everything you possibly can. Never turn down the opportunity to meet someone new, and never, ever burn a bridge unless it is absolutely necessary.
Outstanding. Great advice. Charlie, it's been great talking to you. Go ahead and give your links out again so the audience can write them down again. So how to get in contact with you and how to become part of the church?
Absolutely. So the website is www.dearcalvinproject.com. Again, it will be this weekend. And the way to get in touch with me directly is either joining the Facebook group, which is called Dear Calvin Project, or sending me a direct email at cjones@dearcalvinproject.com are the ways to get a hold of me. My contact information is also there, as far as phone goes, and I'll take calls as well. So I'd love to find more people to help with this, this venture. And I really do appreciate you having me on here. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day in Chicago.
And you too. Take care.
All right. Have a good one.
Well, that was a great interview with Charlie. Our second guest is Dennis Shroader, an Army veteran who saw a similar need to that of Charlie. He started the Price of Freedom Foundation, where they also will be preserving the memories of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. So without further ado, let's get Dennis on the show.
All right. So go ahead and just give us a brief story of how, from whatever point in your life through your service to where you are now.
Okay, super. Well, I was born into a Navy family in 1956. My father was a machinist mate in the Navy in Oakland, California. He bounced around to a variety of bases and sea assignments, mainly on the West Coast, until 1970 when he retired from the Navy. He settled in Tacoma, Washington. I was entering high school at that time. I thought I wanted to go into the Navy. In fact, I did want to go in the Navy. I joined the Sea Cadets while I was in high school and participated with them for all 4 years of high school and applied for ROTC scholarships because my dad said, having spent his career as an enlisted man, he says, you'll live a better life if you can be an officer. He said, just pay attention to your NCOs. And so I took his advice. But the Navy said I have defective color vision and therefore I could be a Marine. And at that time, that was not what either I nor my father had in mind, even though I have a great respect for Marines and have a lot of friends who are Marines today. The Army provided a scholarship to, through ROTC at the same time, and that's the route that I chose. Entered the Army in 1978 as a medical service corps officer, and had assignments at, of course, with the Army Medical Department's headquarters being in San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston. Did training there several times. Had assignments at Fort Stewart and Fort Lewis, Washington. Had a short break in service when I stayed in the reserves and drilled as a member of a MASH hospital. Returned to active duty. Did 7 years recruiting doctors for the Army in Philadelphia and Orlando, Florida. Back to Fort Lewis, then out to Hawaii. And that wrapped up 20 years of service. I retired to Tacoma, Washington. 11 years later, I was asked to come back and did a 2-year retiree recall at Fort Knox. Got a position with Chamberlain College of Nursing, later university, that brought me to Middle Tennessee. And a couple of years ago, that job went away, and I had the time to pursue the idea for the nonprofit that I now run called the Price of Freedom Foundation.
Wow, it's a pretty good journey right there.
Oh, yes.
Outstanding, actually. And so with that, what led you to start the Price of Freedom Foundation?
Well, it really was a variety of things that kind of built upon one another. I have attended a number of funerals over the years, and it just seemed to me that a lot of the kids that were there really weren't going to remember much about the person. and that I felt that, especially for those who have paid the ultimate price, that their kids deserve to know more. So that kind of was kicking around in my head for a while. And when I was during my period between originally retiring and the retiree recall, I remember seeing articles in traditionally left-wing editorially magazines like GQ and Esquire. They're kind of men's magazines that I liked for the styles and the such that they would have in there. But they were always kind of anti-military in over the years. And I saw some articles that they wrote that were actually in-depth and very good about a handful of people who had fought and died in our wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I loved that. But I always was thinking immediately was, what about all the others? You know, what about the soldiers and the Marines and the airmen that aren't being recognized? And what about their families? And so that was what really kind of was the thoughts behind it. And this just kind of percolated for a long time. And I guess I just have had the experience of having an idea kind of sit and stew, if you will, for a long time before I start talking about it and actually starting taking actions. What prompted me to actually take action was a Marine friend of mine, a retired female Marine Corps drill sergeant who worked for a sister school when I was working for Chamberlain College of Nursing. And I was telling her about this idea that I had, that we should try to find as many people that knew the fallen as possible and interview them, collect those stories while they're still relatively fresh in people's memory, and create a biography that then can be written and given to the family so that they have something that can be passed on to future generations. And for me, I was just thinking, hey, this can't be an original idea. You know, there's got to be somebody that's been doing this, and I just don't know where they are. So I ran it past her and a couple of other friends that I knew from the military, and just to get some feedback. And she said, "Love the idea, Dennis. Now get off your ass and make it happen." So that was really the genesis of taking action towards this. And that was about 2 or 3 years ago that we had that conversation. And since then, I've done what I can. I mean, it's like I knew that I had this idea. I knew that I wanted to honor those who paid that price to a degree that's higher than what is currently done. And I knew that I would probably get a lot of people that would say, "Hey, we like the idea too." But I had no background in running a nonprofit organization. I had no background in writing or publishing. I had no background in video or doing documentaries, because part of this that we want to do is to tell this story both in print and in video forms. But I said, I don't want to be the guy that at the end of my life says, "Man, I wish I would have tried something about this idea that I had." So a couple of years later now, I've got a few volunteers. I got a bunch of people that are following us on Facebook. And we are slowly putting things together. So we still have a long, long ways to go. But I believe this is a worthwhile endeavor. I'm definitely committed to giving all that I am and all that I have towards it. And hopefully others are going to say, "Hey, I want to participate and I want to help too."
Well, definitely. This is a great endeavor. And as soon as I spoke to you the other day with our chat, I spoke to my soldier's mom. He passed in December of 2010 in Afghanistan. And I asked if anyone ever did this for her. and she said no, so she'll probably be reaching out to you here soon. And I'm sure I'll reach out to the rest of the platoon to get them involved to get the story out there.
That would be great. We would love that. I mean, we've got a lot of different ways we can go with this, but our concept is that we want to have everybody that has anything significant, had significant interaction with them, to be able to sit down, probably through a Zoom meeting, at least while we're still in this pandemic situation. But we want to record that. We want to film that because, yes, we want to create the written word, but you and I both know we're in a video-centric society, much more so than a logos or written word society anymore. And I just believe that by getting that story out to a wider audience, and from the perspective of a third party, that the sense that most military survivor families have that their loved one is forgotten and that their sacrifice isn't honored, that typically hits around 6 months to a year after the service member passes, I think we'll be directly addressing that. Because if we can keep those stories circulating and going, and new people seeing, this person, we don't want to make Superman out of regular Joes, but every person has something, has a story to tell. Every person had hopes and dreams, had a vision for the future that didn't really come to pass. But they did do things while they were with us. They touched people's lives. They succeeded at some things. They struggled with others. We want to tell that whole story because I think it's worth telling, and it's worth remembering.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And with that said, you said 6 months. It took me 5 years to actually meet his mom. So
okay.
I met them while they were deployed. I went from Korea right to Afghanistan, basically, while they were already there. Met them, lost him. I stayed in country in the fight, came home, and then PCS. I got ready to deploy again, then PCS. Mm-hmm. So my clock never stopped moving until basically I retired to finally meet her.
Right.
And since then, we've become real close friends. She's family to us. Now, to get this for her would be great.
I think I don't have much data on what this will do for soldiers like yourself, who were the battle buddies, so to speak, of the fallen. The data that I got came from USUHS, the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, who completed one long-term military survivor family grief study, and they were in the process of doing another. But they did a study of 16,000 families from 2011 for a 10-year period, which represented all active duty military deaths during that period of time. And it was that study that showed it was almost universal that these families had this sense of that their loved one was forgotten in that time frame, that 6 to 12 months. And of course, it's going to be different for each person, but of course, the exceptions to that would be like the Pat Tillmans of the world, his family, that get that national attention, and his story is always out there. That's probably never going to go away, and that's okay. But it's like I'd like to be able to address the regular Joes that don't get that kind of press.
Yes, sir. That's the best. That's exactly right, because those who were not in the spotlight prior will never be in the spotlight unless they get something like what you're doing out there.
Right.
So that's awesome.
So
how many have you done so far, or have you accomplished a bunch?
We are actually working on our very first one right now.
Okay.
I've met through another contact on LinkedIn, a Gold Star daughter. This story is about a Navy machinist mate, Alfonso Amos. He had been in the Navy for 18 and a half years, and he was lost at sea off the USS Kitty Hawk while it was sailing between Japan and Korea in October of 1998. And he had a son and two daughters, and one of the daughters, Jen, is the person I was put in touch with. And at the time, she was 10 years old, and her younger sister was only 5. And so they had actually been trying to piece some things together themselves to get a better picture of their father and the life that he lived, especially for the younger sister, because she had no memories of their dad at all. So we're in that process right now of identifying people who knew him. We have identified, of course, family members and one person who was his best friend while he was in the Navy. But I'm having a real struggle with trying to get records right now. The Navy only provided her with the certificate that identified the casualty, the casualty notification of what the time, etc. They did not provide the family with any other records like efficiency reports and records of assignments and schools and stuff like that, which would really help us if we, in our search to find his shipmates and others that may have known him while he served. So that's kind of what where we're at with this process. For each story that we tell, we believe it's going to take about a year to number one, find everybody, reach out to them, complete the interviews, and then have those transcribed and provide all of that to a writer who would then write the biography, and then, of course, go into publication and the like. So it's probably about a year's worth of fairly intensive effort that's going to go into each of these.
It's a lot of investigation, a lot of research too.
Yes.
Especially since '98, I'm sure a lot of his shipmates have also either passed on or just moved away so far from the Navy that they're hard to be found now.
Exactly. Now, I think it's easier today, though, than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, because so many people are connected through social media and the like. So I think it's going to be a little bit easier task to do this now and moving forward than in the past. But you're right. I mean, that's the further into the past we go, the more challenging it will be from the standpoint that people move. And of course, those of us that spent time in the military know that very well. How often we move. And then of course, some folks are going to pass away themselves. So we really would like to get these stories as close to the time of the service members passing as we can. But we also know that there's value in telling these stories no matter how long ago it's been. So
that's exactly right. So how did you wind up with Bunker Labs?
I honestly don't know exactly how I became aware of them. I think when I was first getting started with this, one of the first things I had to do before I could even form the organization was to find people who would be willing to be on the board of directors. And so I was looking for networking events and opportunities in the greater Nashville area, and Bunker Labs came up on my radar for that. And that was how I got to attend a couple of their meetings back pre-pandemic while they were doing, I think, monthly events in town. And they're a great group. I really like them. It was actually through Bunker Labs that I met some guys that do documentary films, and really asked some probing questions that kind of shifted how I was thinking about how we wanted to proceed with our interviews, because I was thinking to myself that if we do a bunch of different stories, there's going to be some that are going to kind of say, hey, this is really different, and that maybe this might be something that could be made into a movie or something like that. And so I was thinking along those kind of lines. And when I would talk to people during these networking events, I'd mention that. And these guys were saying, okay, let's chat. And so we had a conversation. They asked me why video or film at all. And, I started to talk about how I knew that I'm a book lover, so I read a lot of books, but it's like we watch a lot more video than we do reading. And so, okay, well, why are we wanting to get this if it's for the family and mainly for the family? Then why not just stick with books? But I was saying, well, we need to help get this story into a wider audience. And so it's made me go through that process. And they finally asked, well, why? If you're going to do this, why wait 2, 3, 4 years to make a decision on which stories you want to put into video and then go back and ask people to do it again? So I said, wow, you're right. So let's just do what we can now to get the recordings, get the content that we can then make a decision later that says this is what we want to do. These are the stories we want to tell and how we want to tell them. And so that just made a whole lot of sense to us, and that's what we're doing. So similarly, when I'm talking to folks, I say, if you've got ideas, I am not the kind of person that has a locked in stone kind of mentality. I'm always open to different ways to do things, as long as we keep in mind that the bottom line is honoring the fallen and serving their family by telling their story. That's the only thing that we're really locked on. How we do it is totally up to better ideas.
Outstanding. And that's what I like about Bunker Labs. You can go on there and just ask any question, and someone's going to help you no matter what. No matter how far gone you are from the military. Once you put that D in front of you, you're a U.S. military veteran. It's like one big tribe in Bunker Labs that'll come out and help you, and they'll do everything they can to help you. So that's definitely an organization for that. If you could give any advice to an aspiring transition veteran or spouse thinking about starting either a nonprofit or a business, what would you do?
I would say do your homework as far in advance as you possibly can so that you're better prepared. I would say that number one. Make connections, because connections are going to help you whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit business. If you have the ability to go through their online program, so you're doing the planning up front, that do as much preparation before you take the uniform off as you can, because once you leave the security of the service and that regular paycheck, that's a big step, and not everybody responds well to not having that security. So I would say that would be my number one advice.
Awesome. That's great advice. The best preparation is to do it well before you start thinking of that word transition formally. So that's a great piece of advice for them. So if you want to just go ahead and tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can get involved with the organization, go ahead and do that.
Sure,
now.
Absolutely. Well, our website is www.priceoffreedomfoundation.org. You can go there. That's where you find information about us. We have some information about volunteering. We have links there for families that want to have us tell their loved one's story. We have a way to donate to the cause there, and we have an online store for merchandise with our logo on it. We have you can call me directly, and my number is 615-389-1867. And I would say you can send email to info@priceoffreedomfoundation.org. I also have a direct email myself, but my last name is spelled a little different than most, so it doesn't translate well to the audio. And then we also have our social media presence. We are on Facebook, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, all at the Price of Freedom Foundation. And we'd love for you to find those, follow or subscribe to those, because we do have a little bit of different content on each of those forums. And as volunteers, I mean, you mentioned research. We're definitely going to need people to help us do research. I could definitely use somebody who has video editing skills so that we can put these interviews together into video that's going to be interesting for people to watch. It'll catch their attention through social media and make them want more. I could definitely use somebody who's got graphic artist skills and abilities. On our store, we just have our logo, and I'm really proud of our logo. But I see other organizations out there that have these graphics and shirts and sayings, and man, I get jealous, because it's like, man, I wish I had something like that. And we could pretty much any skill that a person has that they feel they have some time that they would be willing to partner with us to help us move this forward. We can use your help. So just reach out to us, and we're glad to have you.
Awesome. Thanks for being on, Dennis. Thanks for taking some time away from your family right there. And I look forward to talking to you in the future once you get your first stories done and see how things are going at that point.
Excellent, Richard. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'd love to be able to chat with that family of your buddy there. So hopefully we can begin telling his story as well.
Outstanding. Thanks,
Thank you,
Dennis.
Richard.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye now.
Well, that is another great episode. Charlie and Dennis, you were amazing to talk to and learn about your stories and, of course, your passion. We appreciate both of you for taking the time to come on and share your stories. On our next episode, we will talk to a few more veteran-owned business owners and see what their adventures are and their passions and, of course, their story. As always, thanks for taking some of your time to spend with us on the Misfit Nation. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and share the link as much as possible. We appreciate you. Till the next time, as always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling. We are the Misfit Nation.